Dricus Du Plessis is going to obliterate Sean Strickland.
Here is the South African finisher, Dricus Du Plessis.
I am learning, even though I've been in this game for a long time, that all mixed martial arts doesn't look the same. Sometimes it looks different, and Dricus Du Plessis looks different.
I'm not gonna defend my belt. I'm gonna keep on fighting like I never had that belt. And I'm willing to die and take a life for this belt.
South Africa is officially on the map now. He is a born fighter.
He loves to fight. He loves violence. I'm one of the best fighters in the world.
I love this sport because it saved my life. Without this, I would have been in a cage somewhere. I would have been a piece of probably doing drugs. Like, this sport gave me a second chance to life.
Du Plessis vs Strickland are set to face off once again at UFC 312 after an extraordinarily close fight in their first matchup, where a lot of people even thought Strickland should have won that fight. But although their first fight was very close, and maybe you can make the argument Strickland did win it, in my opinion, in the second fight between these two, I think Dricus is not only going to beat Strickland, but I think he's going to finish him. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm JuicyMMA. I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Ever since making it to the UFC, Dricus Du Plessis has looked extremely impressive. Although when you watch the guy out there, his style is a little bit goofy, at the end of the day, he gets things done, and he was able to get finishes, he was able to get victories over everybody he's fought in the UFC thus far. As earlier on in his career, he was able to get some nice wins over Trevin Giles, Brad Tavares, Darren Till, and Derek Brunson, finishing a lot of those guys, but ever since Dricus went up against Robert Whittaker and TKO'd him, his career changed from there. Because up until that point, yeah, Dricus was getting some nice finishes and nice victories over some decent fighters at the middleweight division, but he was in trouble in a lot of those fights. Like, for example, against Derek Brunson, he was losing the first round. Against Darren Till, he had some shaky moments late. Against some other guys as well, he had some shaky moments, and it just seemed like his crazy wild style was not necessarily going to be good enough once he faced some of the top fighters in that division. So when Dricus went up against Robert Whittaker, a lot of people thought it was a little bit crazy to send a guy like Dricus all the way up to the top of the division to face a guy like Robert Whittaker, who essentially beats everybody outside of Israel Adesanya. But of course, as we all know at this point, Dricus had a phenomenal performance against Rob, as he was able to dominate Rob at all levels of the game. On the feet, he was doing a really nice job at timing up Whittaker's blitzes with his jab or his right straight. On the ground, he was taking Whittaker down at will, which is something we never say for Whittaker's opponents, and overall it was pretty clear that Dricus was just dominating this guy at all levels of the game, and eventually he was able to find a really nice TKO victory. And after that extraordinary performance against Robert Whittaker, the opinion of the MMA community completely changed. At this point, everybody saw that crazy style as crazy physicality, and fans didn't necessarily know if anybody could beat this guy in the middleweight division. And after his win over Whittaker, he went up against Strickland, which, as I mentioned before, it was a very, very close decision victory for Dricus. In my opinion, I think the decision was correct, but I could see an argument for Strickland winning that fight. But regardless, they gave it to Dricus. His next fight after that, he went up against Adesanya, which obviously wasn't a perfect title defense for Dricus. He was in trouble a few times in that fight. Izzy did a really nice job at going to the body quite a bit, but eventually, similar to what Dricus does in basically all of his fights, he ended up hurting Izzy, taking him down, and submitting him. But a question that some of you may be wondering at this point is, how has Dricus been able to be so successful? Because obviously, as I mentioned, he's gotten a lot of finishes over a lot of talented guys, but he's also fought some of the best guys in the division and some of the best guys of all time in the middleweight division. So how has Dricus been able to be so successful? Well, in my opinion, it comes down to a couple different factors, but the first factor that I want to touch upon is his overall physicality. Because when you watch Dricus out there, two things are apparently obvious. This guy A, hits extremely hard, he hurts a lot of his opponents with singular shots, but also B, he's able to take a shot extremely well. Because as I mentioned, not only in the Izzy fight, but in a lot of his other fights, Dricus has been in some really bad spots. Maybe he was getting ground and pounded by Derek Brunson, maybe he was taking some counter shots from Darren Till, or from some other guys as well. There's definitely been some positions where Dricus has been that has not been good whatsoever. But the fact that Dricus has such great physicality and has such a great ability to take a shot and fire back very quickly has been a huge reason for why he's been so successful. And I think the Izzy fight shows exactly how physical Dricus truly is and how he utilizes it to his advantage. Because as I mentioned, early on in that fight, it was relatively close. I did think Izzy was doing some of the better work over Dricus with those body shots, nice kicks to the legs and head as well. But at the end of the day, Dricus eventually found his shot. He was able to hurt Izzy on the feet with one shot. He landed a couple more after that, and then at that point it became much easier for Dricus to take down Izzy. He took him down in a very unorthodox fashion, but once the fight did hit the ground, he became very technical, as he was able to take Izzy's back right away and choke him out immediately. But another reason for why I think Dricus has been so successful throughout his UFC thus far is due to his overall game planning. Because when you watch Dricus fight some guys out there, specifically against Whitaker, against Izzy as well, against Strickland, there's been so many different opportunities and different fights where it seems like he has a perfect game plan to beat his opponents. And obviously certain fights can get very chaotic. Dricus doesn't necessarily have the most technical style on the feet, but at the end of the day, the fact that he does have very good game planning due to his great coaches that he does have is also a huge reason for why he's been able to be so successful. But the last reason that I want to touch upon for why I think Dricus has been so successful is his will to win. Because I know I keep harping on this point, but there has been a bunch of times where Dricus has been in bad spots. And in any one of those situations, a different guy probably would have gotten finished, or at least would have gotten beaten on the scorecards. But Dricus just continues to push forward and has found a way to win every single one of his UFC fights thus far, which speaks volumes to his overall will to win. But now, some of you may be wondering why I think Dricus specifically will beat Sean Strickland again, and why I think he'll finish him. Well, in my opinion, it was pretty clear that the first fight was very close between these two guys. A lot of times when guys fight Sean Strickland for the first time, he's very tricky. He obviously has a very awkward style, really nice jabs, really good defensively, and very hard to hit, of course. But as you fight this guy more and more, and especially now this will be Dricus' second time fighting Strickland, I think Dricus is going to have a better understanding of what he needs to throw out in order to get certain reactions that he wants, and eventually I do think he'll be able to land on Strickland. And whether that means he knocks him out on the feet or he hurts him on the feet, takes him down and submits him, that's yet to be seen, but I do think that Dricus Du Plessis is going to finish Sean Strickland. Now, obviously, with that being said, Strickland still does have some opportunities to win. Their first fight was extremely close, and if Strickland did a couple of things differently, he easily could still be champ at this point. And in this rematch between the two, I think Strickland needs to continue to utilize that jab, continue to use that defense that he has on the feet, try to stop takedowns as much as possible, and see if he can win a decision that way. Now, as I mentioned before, my official prediction for this fight is I think Dricus is going to win via finish. I don't know if it's going to be a KO or it's going to be a submission, but I do think that he's going to finish Strickland, and I think he's going to move on to Khamzat Chimaev, which of course is another monster within itself for Dricus Du Plessis. But at this point, his main focus is on Strickland. I do think it's going to be somewhat of a tough fight. Strickland's going to be hard to get to with that defense, with that jab, but eventually I think later in the fight, maybe rounds 3, 4, 5, I do think we're going to see a finish for Dricus Du Plessis. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening in this matchup between these two middleweights. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Dricus has a chance to finish on Strickland, or do you think Strickland will beat Dricus? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.